Ladies and gentlemen, we now present to you our next Bravo Dialogue, Perspectives from the Private Sector to Lower Carbon Emissions. Please welcome to the stage the moderator of our next panel, Marina Rosenberg, Regional Head of Latin America for Moody's Investors Service, and panel members Andres Gluski, CEO of AES Corporation, and Chairman of the American Society Council of the Americas, 2023 Bravo Sustainability CEO of the Year, Francisco Ruiz-Tagle, CEO of CMPC, Alvaro Cardenas, President of Latin America and the Caribbean for Diageo, and Carlos Barrera, CEO of Atlas Renewable Energy, who will discuss how the private sector is spearheading strategies, innovations, and collaborative efforts to combat climate change and reduce carbon emissions in Latin America.
Hello, good morning, buenos días, everyone. First of all, I want to start by saying that we're a little bit late, and we are the only panel making you far from your coffee break, so please stay with us, don't leave us. I'm going to start by thanking Susan and the team for the opportunity and the invitation, and it's an honor for me to be moderating this great panel. So without further ado, I'm going to start by introducing the panelists. I'm going to start by Carlos Ucho Barrera. He's the CEO of Atlas Renewable Energy, one of the largest solar IPPs in the region. Atlas started operations in 2017 after a successful MBO backed by Active. Since then, the company has been growing and now has contracted projects and an enterprise value that exceeds $3 billion. After a successful acquisition in 2022, Atlas is currently backed by global infrastructure partners. Ucha holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering and Mechanics from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, and has an executive MBA from Kellogg School of Management in the Northwestern University. Then I'm going to go to Alvaro. He's the president for Diageo in Latin America and Caribbean, and he chairs the executive working group on ESG for Diageo. Alvaro has over 15 years with Diageo and has several roles in general management and finance in LATAM, Europe, and Asia. Prior to his current role, he served as general manager for the Andean region, where he tripled the size of the business in 3 years. His prior experience includes roles in Coca-Cola, Pfizer, and Quaker. He holds a bachelor degree in business administration with a major in marketing. Then I'm going to move to Andres. Andres is the president and CEO for the AES Corporation since 2011. Under his leadership, AES became one of the leading renewable and clean technologies companies in the world. Andres serves as chairman of the Council of the Americas and America Society, and is a member of the executive committee of the board of directors of EEI. He is also on the board of Waste Management and the US-India and US-Brazil CEO forums. He earned his master's degree and PhD in economics from the University of Virginia. And finally, I'm going to go to Francisco. Francisco Ruiz-Tagle is the CEO of CMPC. From 2011 to 2016, he served as general manager of CMPC Forestry, after which he took over as CEO of the merger between CMPC's pulp and forest divisions. Since August 2018, he was appointed CEO of Empresa CMPC. Mr. Ruiz-Tagle earned his economics degree at the University of Chile and holds an MBA from the University of California. He currently sits on the board of the Group of Business Leaders Against Climate Change in Chile, and formerly served as co-chair of Forest Solutions Group. He's married, has 5 kids, and he really enjoys hiking in the Andes. So I think that I've introduced a great panel here. When we address the topic of sustainability, we need to think about the topic with a broader lens. This involves customers, this involves companies, governments, it involves regulators. So when companies have to undertake the journey of sustainability, they need to reassess their whole processes, how they think about everything. They need to rethink about their strategies. Are we hiring and are we retaining a diverse workforce? What type of energy are we using? What type of processes are we doing? Who are our customers? Who are our providers, our vendors? So this topic requires reassessing the company holistically, and it implies a great journey. So I would like to start by Alvaro. If you can please share the journey that Diageo has undertaken.
Yeah. Buenos días. Good morning, everybody. And maybe some of you, we are not that familiar with what Diageo is. So Diageo, we are the largest spirits premium company in the world. Maybe you are familiar with some of our brands that are Johnny Walker, Casamigos, Don Julio. So hopefully you are celebrating your life with one of our beautiful brands. Look, our business is fundamentally dependent on natural resources, yeah, mainly on water and agriculture and inputs. So and for that reason, we are deeply connected to the communities that we source from. And I think that part of communities is a fundamental part of the narrative around how we approach sustainability in Diageo. We firmly believe that we need to approach sustainability in its widest sense, yeah? Which is about ESG. It's environmental responsibility and sustainability plus social impact. And we have to acknowledge that climate change is having a significant impact and has worsened, inequality and gender disparity. So we need to address both. It's not just about the E, it's a lot of attention and responsibility on the S. But let me start with the E, with environmental sustainability and responsibility. For us, we have two main focus areas. One is decarbonization, like for many, many other CPG companies in the world. And the other one is water. On decarbonization, we have been addressing carbon emissions in Diageo since 2008. And in 2020, we launched our Spirit of Progress 2030 targets and commitments, in which we declared and shared the ambition to invest more than $1 billion on sustainability, interventions across our complete value chain to deliver our 2030 goals and 2050 goals. So we have two main goals in Diageo from a carbon perspective. One is carbon scope 1 and 2. That basically are our own operations, our own carbon footprints in the operations that we own. That our target is to get to net zero by 2030. And then we have carbon scope 3, which basically is our suppliers, vendors, customers. That represents 90% of our total carbon emissions. That is the most challenging part, and that's what our objective is, to be net zero by 2050. We have been making real progress on that, especially on scope 1 and scope 2, through many, many interventions in different regions of the world. Like we opened 1 year ago our first carbon neutral American whiskey distillery in the US. We have in place 2 scale large regenerative agricultural programs in Scotland with barley and in Mexico with agave. So progress has been made. However, we do recognize that in order to deliver the scope 3 target that we have, we cannot do that just by ourselves. We need a much more cohesive approach as an industry, but also with the public sector. So far, regulations globally are more linked into disclosure and transparency, but not that much into incentives and helping different organizations how to transition, especially in scope 3. And I think that is one of the biggest tension points that we will have to address in the next few years in order to create a real executional path to deliver our 2050 scope 3 commitments in carbon. Now let's talk about water. We have the same level of relevance that carbon, actually. And especially in Latin America, that we have so many water distress areas, like in Mexico and in Brazil. So on water, our commitment is that by 2026, we want to replenish more water than the one that we use. So we want to be water positive, especially in water stress areas. That is a big ambition that we have. And this is one of the examples of linking environmental sustainability with social impact. So in Mexico, last year, we replenished more than 300,000 cubic meters of water, by investing in wetland in Mexico. And at the same time, we have been working with local communities in Mexico in rainwater harvesting systems that is going to provide drinking water to more than 6,000 students in Jalisco. And I think that part is around, yes, making the big change for the structural agenda that we need, plus really having an impact in the communities that we operate is something that I cannot reinforce enough to all of us to paying attention. and especially in a region like Latin America. And let me talk very quickly about the S, which is social impact. So I think we have a profound commitment in Latin America around 3 factors. One is education. And I feel very proud of this because in Latin America, 15 years ago, we started a program that was Learning for Life, which is about providing professional training into the hospitality industry to the most vulnerable part of our society. So far, we have graduated more than 200,000 people in the region. And now that program, we are moving that program to roll out in the rest of the world. But the other important factor that we cannot forget that we are not there yet is about diversity and inclusion. So big progress on gender diversity, but it's still a tension point in Latin America and many other regions. But talking specifically about Latin America, so we celebrate the fact that in gender diversity, we are making a lot of progress. Right now, we have more than 46% of our leadership roles occupied by women. We want to be 50%, but we are getting there. But now we are moving into ethnic diversity, which is an agenda that is still at early stages, but it's equally important than the one in gender. So I think in general, that was my reflection around how we are approaching this in Diageo is around the right balance in all letters of ESG and not just one.
I think there are going to be some recurring topics that we will hear today in the panel. So Francisco, may I go to you and ask you a little bit about your journey at CMPC, and maybe if you can give us some light on how did you set the targets and which action plans are you currently undertaking?
Okay, thank you, Marina. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to this panel. CMPC is an integrated forest company, started in Chile more than 100 years ago. We start from the seed and end to the pulp, paper, and hygienic products. We have presence in the United States, in 8 different Latin American countries, and basically we're exporter to more than 50 countries in the world. Just to answer your question, we define actually 3 main imperatives. Those are climate, nature, and inequality. So we have organized, our sustainability agenda around these main imperatives. We believe they are complex, they are very much interconnected, and very important for the businesses. Since this is so important for us, we discussed our strategy for the year 2030 some years ago, and it has 5 pillars, and one of them is specifically the sustainability, and it's the way we are approaching all these challenges. And speaking a little bit about climate, the company has defined to decarbonize the operations. We set a very clear goal in terms of scope 1 and 2 by the year 2030. We are reducing our emissions in 50%. And same thing with scope 3 for the year 2035. We are reducing that in 37.5%. And all of this based on the science. We always have been working on that. For instance, our reduction of emission are very much aligned with the 1.5 Celsius degrees down in the temperature, and the case of the scope 1 and 2, and well below 2 Celsius degrees in the case of the scope 3. And the other thing that is very interesting about our industry has to be with the possibility that it has the forest for capturing carbon. In our particular case, we manage 1.2 million hectares, which is about a bit less than 3 million acres of land with forest. So this is a great possibility for capturing. We are not using that in our accountability because there's no formal way based on the science still, in the world. So we hope to start using this very soon. And in the case of nature, we are very much working on water and waste. We also have set goals for the year 2025 about reducing the use of water in 25% and 0 waste to landfill in 2025. This is also a very important target for us. And in terms of inequality, many countries we're working on and has a lot of problems with the poverty and many problems. So we have very clear programs for supporting education in different ways, supporting local and small entrepreneurs, especially in local communities, and also working on all these social topics with academia in order to measure our impact, basically trying to understand the impact on the well-being of the people. So those are more or less our target. We have a clear government for following the sustainability in the company. We created in 2019 a board committee for following the targets, and we already have in place a climate change policy. Every month I present to my board, we have board meetings monthly. Every month I present to my board what is happening with the target we have. If we have any problem or any good news, well, I share that with them so they have the possibility to discuss about this. The other thing I like to mention is that what we also are defined to be a net zero emission company by the year 2040. Which is also interesting. I mean, because we believe that we will be successful in that. We are working hard on that. Since our company is based on natural fiber, recyclable fiber, we have a great opportunity. And just to end, I mean, just to mention that from our investments, we also included in our evaluations a weight of the social, environmental aspects, you know, so we do not define since 3 or 4 years ago projects just based on the financing result, but also we are considering as an important portion in our evaluation what are the challenges we have and the goals we have to set to accomplish by that I mentioned. So this is another important thing. We accommodate the way we are evaluating the projects. And the other thing we have been working hard is in the cultural evolution. We redefine our purpose, which is basically we're creating the natural fiber for a better future. And that purpose we are including, you know, the climate change. We are including the innovation, the future, which is also a great challenge for the company. So we work again on the talent, on the type of leader we need in CMPC. We redefine the values. So all of this in the way to be very aligned with the purpose we have and with the sustainability.
Thank you, Francisco. Now we're going to be shifting to the energy sector. I would like to ask Andres and Uto a few questions. So Andres, let me start with you. I mean, can you share the journey and the lessons learned by AES on the transition to carbon-free sources of energy, especially and particularly in Latin America?
Sure, thanks for the question. I would say first, you know, let's sort of the big picture. Latin America has one of the cleanest energy grids in the world because we have a lot of hydro. But we're also blessed with a lot of sun and a lot of wind. So the transition in Latin America can be, let's say, more meaningful than in many places. Now in AES, when I became CEO, one of our, let's say, claims to fame, we were one of the best operators, developers of coal fluidized bed. So you can imagine, it's been quite a transition. So I think we've moved more than anybody. We started off with 22 gigawatts, which is about the size of a medium country, of coal, and by 2025, we should be down to 0. So at the same time, we become one of the fastest growing renewable companies. Today, we're the biggest seller of renewable energy to corporations in the world. We're also the biggest seller of renewable energy to data centers. So this, you know, transition has been, you know, quite dramatic. Our investment program for the next 5 years, and this includes debt and partnerships, et cetera, is about $40 billion. So we expect that by 2040 to be basically all the electricity we produce to be carbon-free. Now, Latin America has played a very important role in this. So Latin America starts off with one of the cleanest grids, but it's not true for all countries. So one of the biggest transitions that we've done is actually in Chile. So we're one of the biggest suppliers to the copper industry and to the lithium industry, which are key for the energy transition. And so we had to change from coal energy to renewable energy. Now, the big problem with renewable energy is that it's intermittent. So the big problem is that you cannot, supply 24/7 energy from renewables. What happens when the wind's not blowing, sun's not shining? So it's actually in Chile where we first came up with the use of lithium-ion batteries, like you have in your cell phone, for grid stability. So this was the first project, and actually anywhere in the world, the first large project. We had done, let's say, the experimental phases in the US, was in Chile, because you had a very, let's say, progressive regulator. So it's interesting that, the lithium comes from Chile, it's refined elsewhere, and the batteries were coming back to Chile. But this permits us to put more renewable energy onto the grid. So we have transitioned not only ourselves, but we've transitioned the mining sector in Chile to a greener. And actually use that experience that today, the company that we spun off, Fluence, together with Siemens, is in more than 30 countries around the world. It's the biggest supplier of lithium-ion-based energy grid stability anywhere in the world. So this transition has been, again, very important. I'm very bullish about what Latin America can do. A key point is that we're going to have to use new technologies. So one of the things that not only is the intermittency problem there for renewables, but the problem is that if you add up all the copper in the world and you add up everybody's investment plans, we would need 7 times today's copper in 20 years. It's just not going to happen. If you look at lithium, it's 40 times the lithium. So we're also going to have to innovate and come up with, new technologies, new ways of using electricity, smarter grids. We've just worked on a project with Google in Chile to actually digitalize the whole grid. And again, will be Chile's credit, the first in the world, where you actually do millions of simulations using AI of which is the best way to dispatch energy, which is the best way to build the grid, which is the best way to react to natural catastrophes in the area. And it's very interesting. We tend to think of innovation only going one way. But Latin America, again, with regulation, can play a key role. We are the leader in the US of the use of drones for electric utility operations. But it actually started in Brazil, because in Brazil you had to put 1% of your sales to R&D. So we decided to use it for using drones, because you didn't have to be a commercial pilot to fly a drone in Brazil. So we actually have all kinds of drones big drones that go measure the transmission lines, submarine drones that go inside the hydros, small drones to go up the smokestack. So Brazil played a key role. So in closing out, what I'd say is I'm very bullish about the transition, the new technologies that are coming. The things that concern me is, one, that you need to have the regulations to allow you to do this. And I think there needs to be also better understanding of some of the technical challenges. Because you are getting a lot of people's bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere, anyone. And if you do that, we won't be able to do the transition in time. And climate change is real, and it's accelerating.
Thank you very much. Now, moving to you, Ucho, can you please share, your view more on a general topic, which would be the market landscape for energy transition, more
sure,
broader
absolutely.
lens?
So first, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I think we're living through a super interesting time. I think if you look at LATAM, there's, I would say, 3 relevant drivers that are really pushing forward the kind of capacity installations we're seeing across the region. The first, I think, is the most interesting, and I think the world is starting to realize this, but not everybody. Renewables is still out-competing on a cost side versus conventional energy. So solar and wind, if you look at LATAM last year, you had about 22 gigawatts of installations. If you look at this year, it's going to be around 25. So the cost competitiveness of solar and wind continues to beat conventional sources. Solar and wind have essentially become mainstream. You don't have any more coal builds happening in LATAM. You have some large hydros that are still sort of going through the system, but really receiving a lot of issues, a lot of social issues, a lot of environmental issues. So the vast majority of new generation coming across the region is really solar, wind, and some natural gas as well, okay? That is a huge driver. That is a huge driver because the second component I'll talk about is the demand side. But the fact that the cost is more competitive than conventionals, that is really what is accelerating the growth of renewables. The second driver, I would say, is that demand side, right? So we've seen government regulation across the globe to try to foment more renewable penetration. I think what we're seeing is there's consolidated momentum by corporates to accelerate their energy transition. It's not necessarily coming from governments, it's more coming from corporate boards. We're seeing this in spades, as Andres was saying, in the heavy industry side. So you have the mining side, you have the metals, you have the chemical sector, you have data centers, in some cases paper and pulp. You're getting all these massive industries, heavy industries, wanting to make the energy transition because the procurement of energy is really the low-hanging fruit for them. So all these major industries are already making that energy transition. We partner with Dow Chemical, with Anglo American, with Hydro, with many large corporates in these large heavy industry segment that are looking to make that energy transition. The B2C segment as well, right? So those customer constituencies like Diageo, like other retail companies and corporates that we serve, they're also looking to make the energy transition, right? In the previous panel, they were speaking about Mexico and the nearshoring that is happening there. There's a massive opportunity for Mexico to structurally change their economy and to bring, significant new capacity of all sorts of industries of manufacturing for that nearshoring effort. What they're looking for is clean energy. They're looking for a blend, at least, of clean energy. So that is the second driver. So cost, number one, and this corporate demand consolidating is number two. Number three, I would say there's new emerging enabling technologies that are also supporting the transition. The first one that's arriving to LATAM, that's most important, Andres alluded to, it's battery storage, right? This intermittent nature of solar, of wind, is, limits how much capacity can be installed. With the proliferation of battery storage systems, with regulation to enable those investments, that allows further penetration of solar and wind. And so this right now is going to continue allowing a greater investment, I would say, of renewables and basically an advancement of that energy transition. Later down the line, we're going to start seeing green ammonia. There's been a lot of noise around green hydrogen. There's a lot of pilot projects happening. I think that's a few years out. I think once that happens, again, those big industrials that have these large industrial processes which are hard to change overnight, these new technologies that will emerge over the next 3 to 7 years, let's say, will further enable that. So those are the three main drivers. Again, cost, demand, and new technologies. Just to close it off, I think the government regulation piece, I would agree that that's been very helpful in kickstarting the industry in many of the countries. Indeed, in Chile, they have regulations for battery storage systems. Colombia is also developing those. But I agree with Andres that you need a lot more regulation, right, that has to really come into play to, again, incentivize investments in the areas that need to be incentivized in order for that to continue. So that is a factor, but I think we need to see a lot more of it.
Thank you. So technology, regulation, investment seem to be recurring topics among the panel. I would like to shift the angle now to the financing landscape for decarbonization, and especially in this context of high rates. I mean, Francisco, plenty of the companies here have issued like labeled instruments or have experience in trying to finance decarbonization. So can you please share your experience?
Yes. Well, this is a very interesting topic. We started by the year, in 2017, issuing our first international bond. It was a green bond, and related to, the proceeds were basically used to improve our sustainable conditions in the company. We invested in decarbonization, we invested in plantations. So basically, it was a very interesting experience. At that time, probably the interest for that kind of green bonds were not too particularly important, but we decided to continue investing in this kind of instruments. So in the year 2020, we started with the sustainable link financing instruments. And I was interested because, very interesting because we include there, our sustainable targets, the same I mentioned before, emissions, the uses for water, the waste to landfill, all of that is included in our debt now. And it is good for us because it makes us more transparent in the markets. We are, every time that this is, many people could have an opinion on that. So this is also a very good proof for the greenwashing problem that we have today. So we just hopefully have eliminated, this doubt about this kind of initiatives. And today we have issued that kind of debt in the United States, in Chile, in Mexico, in Brazil, in Peru, in Japan. And has been very important because we have really a much broader, I would say, number of different investors and financial institutions that want to be involved with the company. Probably today about 60% of the total debt of CMPC is or green debt or any sustainable link financing instrument that is with us today. So a very good experience and very important, I would say, for the company and for put our commitments in a very prioritized way.
Thank you. What about your experience, Andres?
I would say right now there is money available for well-structured projects. Yeah. I think that the concern about the market of higher interest rates on renewables is very much overblown. We've seen a real pullback and people are extremely concerned about it. I think you will have a weeding out of good projects and not so good projects. But certainly, as has been mentioned here, large corporate customers want the green power. And good developers have been able to pass on higher interest rates into those costs. And there are advantages that are not only the financial side, it's also look how volatile the prices of fossil fuels have been. So it gives people certainty and you can sign contracts for a very long time. I would like to take advantage to say that Latin America can play an important role in green hydrogen because we have so much renewable capacity. So we have a project in Chile to take our customers, the mining sector, to the next decarbonization, which is their heavy machinery. So, and also projects in Brazil for export. So I think just to say that, again, Latin America can play an important role because I think it's going to be a lot easier to produce and use green hydrogen in Latin America than, for example, Europe, where there's not a lot of space for these projects.
Thank you. And Ucho, in your experience, has this type of instruments broadened the access to more investors or lowered the financing costs?
Yeah, look, I think on the financing side, it's better to look at it broadly, right? So in terms of green bonds, I think we have a lot of experience with that. I think the first, not sure there's a noise, but I think the first green bond across LATAM for energy use, we did actually some time ago. So we're always looking at the bond market, we're looking at the banking market. I think what's encouraging is despite the macroeconomic condition, right, which comes with uncertainties and it's complex, as we all know, I would say we have not seen a drying up of liquidity for energy projects, not for green energy projects, that is, okay? In terms of like tenors and things like that, that's really a different issue. So with Basel III regulation, we saw tenors come down. And so that brought back, the bond market in a more active way because long tenor bank debt became more scarce. But as of recent, again, I would say if you have a good project, if you have a good sponsor with a track record that's behind it, you can access the funds that you need. And I would say it's actually the opposite. I think there's additional pools of liquidity that are coming into the kind of clean energy side of the business. In terms of the cost, it's definitely an issue, right? Interest rates went up. That means your costs go up. But it's not different from any other cost input, right? When your costs go up, you have to figure that out. Can you increase your price? Can you not increase your price? Do you have to absorb that? And that's really a function of supply-demand dynamics in the different markets and how able are you to be able to pass on that cost. So overall, I would say it's an issue. We have seen PPA prices, that's energy contract prices, going up as a result of that and some other things as well. But it's not an area of major concern on the financing.
Good. So I would like to end this panel with a positive note and ask Alvaro to share your views. How do you think that companies in Latin America can collaborate and move forward in this journey?
Yeah, look, I think, especially if you think about our peer group, we are all wrestling with the same tension points. Yeah, we are all asking the same questions around how are we going to fund this agenda? Yeah. How the consumer is going to react to this agenda. What is the level of understanding of the consumer? Is the consumer willing to pay premium prices for this or not? That helps organizations to really fund this and move forward. And the reality is that those questions are going to be addressed if we start to work more in a more collaborative way, but I say in a more decisive way, as an industry, as a sector first, and then with governments. Because I think that is one of the most important angles that for me is still missing. It's around getting in a more transparent and honest conversation with governments around what would it take for us, for companies and organizations to deliver against those targets. And the reality is that it's not going to be possible for organizations by itself just to deliver that. We will have to help governments to shape regulation, to shape incentives, to shape policies. But in order to do that in the most effective way, we need to be first working as an industry, as a sector, as I said at the beginning, to have a united view around how to move forward. Yeah? And I think that's the main issue that we are having globally as well, not just in Latin America. If you ask an investor in the US, an investor in Europe around ESG as an agenda, the answer is completely different about what level of priority is. And we are publicly listed companies. Investors want, yes, for you to deliver ESG commitments, but to be profitable as well and to continue expanding margin. And I think those dilemmas and polarities are the ones that we continue facing and every single CPG company at this moment is facing. Having said that, the only possible outcome for us is continue working on this, continue learning. Nobody has all the answers. This is a continuous learning journey. For us, that has been the case. We are halfway through our 2030 commitment that we announced in 2020, and all the learnings so far are informing how we are moving forward. And I think I will finish with something that some of our panelists said. I think Latin America is well positioned to lead the way in so many aspects, on green energy, on green packaging, on sustainability, because it's in our DNA. So I think if we think about how can Latin America shine the most, I think this is one of these agendas that can shine the most and lead the way for global organizations.
Thank you. So these are the opportunities that we have to connect with peers, to get great ideas and collaborate and execute together. So thank you very much, amazing panelists. Thank you very much, the audience.